welcome to Stash Chat. For those of you who are new around here, my name is Yvette. I am the co-founder of the Stash Hub Sewing Organizer app. So do get involved in the chat. I can see Mandy's already joined us. So happy to see Stephanie live. Yes, I'm really, really excited for this chat. If you're watching us live, please do pop into the live chat and just let us know whereabouts you're joining us from, just to get the chat warmed up a bit. And then you'll be able to ask Stephanie your questions as well. Or hello, Acorn Daisy Sews. Welcome to Stash Chats. Stash Hub news. I usually just kick us off with a little bit of news about our app. We've got a big update with loads of little improvements coming soon. So that will hopefully be with you next week. And then the week after that, we're going to be exhibiting at the Stitch Festival in London. So if you're going to be there, that'll be really exciting to see you in person. Hello, Natalie. Thank you for joining us tonight. Today we're talking to Stephanie Canada, who I'm sure a lot of you guys will know from Backroom Finds. So Stephanie is an expert at hunting out vintage patterns and fabric. So she collects a lot for her own stash, but also shares it with the sewing community through her shop Backroom Finds, and she makes really hilarious and entertaining videos on YouTube as well. So it's going to be a really fun conversation, I think, and I'm really interested to hear more about how Stephanie got into sewing, how she started running her business, and where her love of all things vintage came from. So yeah, it's going to be really good fun. And don't forget to ask your questions in the live chat. And if you're watching on replay, do pop into the comments as well and let us know what you thought of this episode. So hello, Alison. Everyone that's still joining, please keep saying hello in the chat. And we can all have a really fun conversation together. Hello, Louvre from London. Right, should we get Stephanie on and get this stash chat going? Okay. Hi, Stephanie.
Hello.
Welcome to Stash Chat.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Oh, it's really exciting to have you here. So do you want to just give us a little introduction to yourself?
Sure. So for those of you who don't know, obviously, my name is Stephanie Canada. Yes, just like the country. And no, I sadly don't live there. I live in middle Florida. And if you're wondering why it sounds like my voice might be down an octave or two, and it sounds like I've chewed on gravel as a pastime, that would be because I just got done at the Sewing and Stitchery Expo 2025, where I was vending for 4 days and also teaching. And because I'm an opera stage manager and you can't beat silly things out of me, I did not use a microphone because the rooms were so small. And now I'm paying for it. So I am a vintage seller and a vintage lover of maker things, have been since I was little. So, yeah.
Amazing. So do you want to tell us about your sewing journey? Like who inspired you or taught you to first start sewing?
Absolutely. So for me, it was my mother. My mother had sewn since she was small. She was one of 6, and she was the only one who ever picked up sewing. So unfortunately, she caught the brunt of all the sewing for all the other brothers and sisters. And then as she got older and had me, she tried desperately when I was like 2, 3, 4, 5 to like give me a little kit, all the age appropriate things for textile. Well, about the age of 8 or 9, I finally started to make my first doll clothes on her 1980s Singer. I don't remember the model because it unfortunately died a couple years after I started. Well, she convinced me to keep sewing sort of until I was about 16, 17. I did one high school show where I was the costume designer. I made the unfortunate choice to pick a red sequined lame fabric for these 3 dancers that we had. And I could barely sew cotton. So after a little bit of frustration and anger at this fabric, I decided I was done with sewing and I didn't want to do it anymore. So unfortunately, I then went to, I went to theater school, took costuming as a sidebar, not quite a full minor, but it inspired me to just do with what I could. And then unfortunately, after college, a few years later, my mother passed away. And then basically I reverted back to, instead of hating sewing and really just not liking it, I went, oh, that's kind of a way for me to keep my mother alive and to keep her, legacy continuing. So I opted to go back to it. And then the pandemic happened and everything closed down. And I went, you know what? I'm still not good at sewing, but let's put it on YouTube for everyone to watch. So that's kind of how we've landed here.
So did you inherit a lot of sort of sewing supplies and patterns from your mother?
Funnily enough, no. Because when I was 21, 22, my mother and father decided they were going to move out of our family home that we lived in for most of my life. And she got rid of most of the stuff, honestly. She also, I think at that point, knew her health was failing, and she knew that she could easily find new homes for her fabric in Ohio, where she lived and knew everybody. But she didn't know people where she was moving to, and she didn't want to move it. So actually, the biggest things I got from my mother was her sewing machine, a small box of patterns, and a couple of vintage garments that she had like cut up and made little shadow boxes out of. So I have this really cute 1960s number that she had made for herself that has a huge friggin' hole in the middle from where she cut it out and made a memory box of it.
Why did you cut the middle?
I'm like, Mom, we couldn't have done the hem. But like, I don't think that at the time I was giving her all the cues I never wanted to sew. I didn't care about sewing. I wasn't going to care about this stuff. So like, can't be mad at her, but I'm just like, if you could have done the hem, lady, that would have been cool. I could have just shortened it and let my daughter wear it, because my daughter loves vintage clothes, so we love it.
That's very handy that she's into it as well.
Yeah.
And it's like passing through the generations as well. That's really nice.
Yeah. So I will say that's sort of how we landed here. And it is still really nice that she does, she asks me to make her things still. So that's wild, because I distinctly remember being about right around her age, where I went, Mom, can you not make me everything? And I'm pretty sure that hurt her heart a little bit now that I think about it. But no, it's still fun because my child still loves it, and I love to make for her when I can remember to finish it all the way.
That's amazing. Mandy's in the chat saying, hi, Stephanie. I love your channel. Love your humor and chaos.
Hi, Mandy. Thank you.
That's really fun. So how did your sort of like collecting of vintage supplies kind of kick off? Like when you got back into sewing, were you always interested in vintage sewing?
So I wasn't. After my mother passed away, unfortunately, handing a 25-year-old a substantial amount of money means that 25-year-old is going to do some stupid crap with it. And then a part of me went, now, wait a minute. I don't know what to do with this. And at the time, I was still a very small opera stage manager, not making a whole lot of money. And I was like, well, how can I connect my love of what my mother did and still vaguely make some extra gas money to get from contract to contract? And the answer was vintage sewing patterns, because they were easy to store, easy to ship, and they did not take up a whole lot of room, because at the time I was basically living out of my car going from job to job. So if it didn't fit in my toaster on wheels, I couldn't take it with me. So I went into the back of an antique store, and in this little hat box were these 1960 patterns that had never been used. Not once, not ever. And I was like, oh, well, that's fun. I wonder if those might be worth something. And so at the time, Etsy was still very small, still very like vintage handmade, not as crazy as it is now. I was like, oh, wow. So some of these were worth, it was like I was paying $1 and they were selling for 16. I was like, well, that sounds like a tank of gas to me at the time. So I was like, great. So I picked up the little hat box and I bought them. And that sort of snowballed quickly. when I discovered that there were lots on eBay too. And I was like, oh, well, that's cool. So I definitely made sure to do all of that. And then it just sort of snowballed into what we have now, where I flew 15 boxes full of vintage patterns that are not on my website across the country. And I have over 7,000 available items on my website, from vintage fabrics to trims, all of the above.
Amazing. Oh, we've got Ned Canada's just joined us, a bit late to the party,
Yep.
but I'm here.
That's the husband.
Nice. Here for the moral support. Love to see it.
Yes, he's very supportive of me as I go around and do all these things. Also, I'm sorry the sun has found me somehow in Seattle. I don't know how that happened.
No one was prepared for this.
No one was prepared for the sunlight.
So yeah, your vintage pattern collecting, it kind of, you know, really started out as like an entrepreneurial spirit. So like, when did you know, get into sort of giving some of the patterns a go yourself?
That was really after lockdown started, honestly, because before then I knew what a pattern was. I knew how to check it. I knew how to use it because my mother had taught me all of those things. But I didn't feel comfortable actually making anything, mainly because I was very scared of my mother's machine. Because my mother was, she was very skilled at what she did. She took all the classes, so she knew how to use it. And unfortunately, before she had passed on, she wasn't able to teach me much more than like the most basics of basics to do with her machine. So it was a little difficult to sort of start because I only had this very fancy machine that I was kind of afraid of. So I just sold sewing patterns for so long. And then at one estate sale, I want to say in 2018, came across the cutest little 1960s Singer that had a bright, well, not a bright pink, but like I had a good pink case and pink base. You opened it up, it was cream with pink accents, and it was all metal. I was like, oh, now wait a minute. I feel comfortable on that machine, because at the time I knew about 3 to 4 different little shops that would fix them up should they break, because they're an all metal machine and they're easy to repair. So I started sewing on that instead. And so that's really where I started to get confident. I still wasn't confident with patterns. I was still afraid to use them. So I would do like a DIY pleated skirt, which now that I think about it, arguably is actually harder than using a pattern. I don't know why I started with a pleated skirt. Gathered skirts are a rectangle. You smush them down, you add a waistband, you move on with your life, right? But like pleat, there's math in there. Why did I think that was easier than a pattern? I don't know.
I think a pleat is like a concept that you can understand though, right? Like you know,
Yeah.
if you've seen a pleated item, you're like, okay, you know, the fabric's folded over like this. Great, I can do a pleat.
Yeah.
Whereas with the gathering, you know, if you don't know about how to do like the basting stitches and like evenly distribute them and all this, it's like a whole different skill to learn.
Yeah. But yeah, so for some reason that was my play. And so I sat there. I didn't even like do one of the cheat tricks where you like use a fork. I literally sat there with my ruler and I marked every single thing, and then I had to fold it. And then, yeah, it was a wild journey. But from there, it was really the lockdown that I was like, well, listen, if we're going to do this, we're going to do this. Like, let's just figure it out. So I would start, and of course, because I'm me, I have to start with the hardest daggone pattern. But I would start by making stuff for my daughter off of original 1940s patterns, which are completely blank. So they are just perforated with the markings. The seam allowance is included, but like that pattern piece is literally all you need with no markings whatsoever. And that's where I started, because I'm silly.
So you're just like, what am I doing? Checks instructions. Okay, you're not going to tell me. I'll figure that out then.
Yes, because unfortunately, the "in the usual way" does absolutely come up. And I was like, no, 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 no. What? Why? Why are we doing this? Don't do that. But that's also when I learned that you need to have some type of vintage manual within like a 20-year range of your pattern to help you when those type of things happen, right? Because otherwise it's like, what is the usual way? Can you elaborate? And the answer really is no, because at the time that was basic information that they assumed everyone knew. So you can see, the thing I find interesting about vintage patterns is you can sort of see the knowledge gap grow. You can see the
Yeah.
loss of information over the years, because actually for this expo, I found a 1930s pattern for a child's drop waist handkerchief hem dress that had triangular divots to insert the skirts into, and like very, like much more detailed than your average child's dress. It had 6 line of instructions. No paper, no diagrams. It had 6 lines of instructions, and that was it. I was like,
And now you
oh,
think like the indie PDFs that have got like 40 pages.
yeah. But, and that's the thing, we're not, while it's funny, right? It's funny to us. It's like, oh my God, look at the knowledge gap. It's also like, there's a moment where like, oh, that's kind of sad that we've lost that much innate knowledge about this craft of a thing that literally everyone has to wear or you get arrested. Like, how, it makes me a little sad to know that this knowledge drop happened. And it's like, well, how do we help now? And the answer for me was get online and show people it's not as scary as it is. Yeah, you're going to make mistakes. Yeah, it's not always going to look exactly the way you want, but you're going to have a finished garment. And a lot of the times that finished garment is going to be something you want to wear over and over again, like mine that I did from a 1953 pattern. So like, it's just one of those things. It's like, oh, it's funny, but it's also, oh, where'd all the knowledge go? Where'd it go?
Yeah. And I think as well, like in sort of education as well, it was very much prioritized, especially for girls. Like, you know, these are the skills that you'll need.
Yes.
And now I think in a lot of schools, they don't do any sewing at all.
Yeah, unfortunately. So for my child, I'm doing that at home. So we're practicing on making a stuffed animal and making another stuffed animal. You know, just basic practicing the techniques to figure out how to be able to do it in the long term.
Yeah. Well, that's really cool. And then even if they like don't get super into it, at least they've got that skills, like those skills if they want to come back to sewing like later on, like
Exactly.
you did.
Exactly.
Amazing. Yeah, Acorn Daisy Sews says, love your channel, Stephanie, Sewing Chaos. I think it's really good on your channel as well. Like you were just saying, how you show things that like don't always go exactly to plan as well. Because I think people need to see that. It's like when you
Yes.
sew, it can be quite lonely. Like you're just at home with your sewing machine, with your project that's maybe not going very well, and you're just like, what's happening here? Like, am I stupid? Like,
Yeah,
surely
right.
no one else is doing this mistake. But you know, having like an honest sort of sew along on, you know, someone who's just like, okay, that pattern didn't work out, I think is very reassuring for people to see.
Yeah, and that's the thing. Like I love those channels that are like, look at this glorious thing. Look at how I made it. There was absolutely nothing that went wrong. And I go, really? Are we sure? But then, you know, you need those. And then I think you also need a space for people like me, the juxtaposition to the perfection. You need the people that are willing to go on camera and go, wow, that didn't work. What can I do now? And that's something that I think is really important. And it's a voice to the conversation that doesn't always get heard because people are too afraid to go online and look like an idiot. I'll do it. I'll be the idiot online. It's fine with me. Because I do, like, there is a part of me that does know what I'm doing, but also you're still going to make mistakes. And there's nothing wrong with it because literally everyone at some point or another has made that mistake or made a similar mistake. There's nothing bad about it. So it's just like, well, you know, it happens. What do we do now to push through and get to the end product that we want? And that's really
Yeah.
the important part. And that's why I do it.
And there's definitely a lot of like problem solving that happens in sewing as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. All the time. As it is, I realized I'm about to make a dress in like an hour that I'm supposed to wear on Friday. It's fine. Um, so I cut it out because I was like, oh, I've already used this pattern. This is spectacular. Now I went to go cut it out and I realized the dress I'm looking to reproduce is a raglan sleeve dress. So that's and just in case anyone doesn't know what that is, instead of something like this, where it would be like a set-in sleeve, like a usual t-shirt, raglans are the ones that go to the neck. That is an entirely different line set that this pattern absolutely does not account for. And that's the one that I went in and I messaged my group chat for my friends that came here. I said, hey-o, who's got a raglan sleeve that I can use? Because all of my patterns that I have are usually set in sleeves. I don't usually do raglan. So I was like, oh boy, I don't even have a pattern that I can hack these two things together. And so my friend came in and they shared a pattern with me. I printed it out, I cut it out, and it's all the pieces are in my luggage over there. And after we're done talking here, I'm going to go to my friend's house and I'm going to wear those puppies together. And we're going to have a dress for Friday, hopefully.
Good luck.
Not my husband outing me in the chat. Thanks, Ned.
I think that might have been about your daughter and then you teaching them to
sew. Yeah, but it also works for me because, hi, pot, kettle, not far away from each other. Let's be real.
Steph never puts things off until the last minute.
No, not me. Never. Wow, it's like a freaking it's like a glowworm.
Like
I promise it's just juice. Water. Yeah, right? Oh, hydration.
Oh, Ned says they're the same person in different bodies.
It's very, very true. It's so
That's
true.
very sweet, but it also must be like a lot for Ned sometimes.
Listen, he's acting like he's not also inside there. He definitely is. Our child is a good balance of the two of us with immediate mirrors in very specific ways where we're like, oh boy, there it is. There's the mirror shining glaringly in our face like my arm in the sunlight. Like, yeah. But, wonderful kid, but just, it is a moment. Listen, parenting is a moment. Parenting is definitely a moment.
We've never once said, stop being like me.
No, definitely not. No, I would never. I would never say that. I can't go down because I'm already in a chair.
Right, shall we chat a little bit about your personal sewing stash?
Sure. Listen, I outed myself in my, not last video, but 2 videos ago. I realized that my personal sewing stash had gotten a little out there. And the problem was that even though I had redone my whole room the year before, with clear plastic tubs that I could see through. And in my brain, that meant if I could see it, I would use it, right? Because then I'm going, oh, I don't need to go shop then because I'll be able to see all the... No, lies. Absolute lies. Because then they were all stacked on top of each other. And that to me is a more annoying pain point. Because if I want something in the bottom bin, I don't want to remove the other 5 bins to get the thing. So I would just change projects. So my stash now fills. I redid my wall into like a giant dark academia bookcase, and it fills the entire lower half of that bookcase that goes across my entire wall. Everything is stood up on end. Here's where the sunlight isn't. And they're wrapped around like comic book cardboards. So I wrapped them around there and I pinned it, and it fills the entire bottom half of that bookcase. And that's not all of it. There's some stuff that's on bolts that's like still in my hallway because it can't quite fit into the closet where I want it yet. So it's like, well, I do actually need to deal with that when I get home because that can't be out there. It's so annoying. Like it's in the way. But yeah, no, it's a little large. I did, thankfully, as I was going through, I tried to go through and go, okay, do I really need 7 different types of rose fabric that I clearly haven't used yet because I'm scared of it? Can we get rid of 1 or 2? And so I was able to destash a little as I went through. It's not as impressive as the first time I destashed, which was a very impressive pile of stuff that I had just kept and kept and kept and kept. So I am proud of myself, but we still have a lot to go. And I will say, I went to Sew Expo where one of the vendors only specializes in vintage cottons, and they're beautiful. Like her sourcing is spectacular. Um, and her prices are decent. And so I was like, I'm going to only buy one piece of fabric from her this year. And I went, and there was nothing that called out to me because I have just gone through my entire stash. And there's so many other pieces that I have at home that I know I want to. So I actually was very good. I bought zero fabric at the Sewing
Oh,
Expo.
very impressive.
I did get a new pair of Kai scissors though. These I actually needed. So I was very proud of myself that I did not grow my stash in this endeavor.
Amazing. And you managed to sell quite a lot of the patterns that you brought with you as well.
I did. We sold a fair amount. I was hoping for a little more. I was really hoping to have 0 boxes to ship home. I realized that from 15 to 0 is a big ask, right? So we didn't make it there, but I did downsize from 15 boxes to 5 boxes. So not bad. Most of that extra space was thankfully because I also was teaching a how to make your caftan without a pattern class, which meant that I had to haul across 16 kits of fabric that were all 4 to 5 yards each of vintage 1970s knit. And originally I was going to do like these big, chunky, thick double knits. And I looked at the pile that I had made of 5 fabrics, and it was half of my height.
Wow.
I was like, no, nope, we're cutting and running. We're going to pick some different fabrics. I got to fit this stuff in a couple suitcases in a box. So a lot of that, thankfully, was all that fabric I brought specifically for the class that got used in the class. So thankfully, we're very thankful, because also that means our suitcases are not nearly as heavy on the way back, because that stuff adds up quick when you're shipping it.
Yeah, knit fabric's like surprisingly heavy compared to woven fabric.
They are. And I'm like, I don't fully understand why, other than like you just need slightly more fibers to be able to go all the different directions than woven, which is pretty much, squares of fabric, because there's very little stretch in there. But I'm like, it's wild to me. It really is, because knits do get heavy so fast.
We've got a couple of comments in the chat. So Acorn Daisy says pleats were one of the first things I sewed as well.
Nice. Yes, go make it harder for yourself, Pleat Town.
What does Mandy say? I'm just starting out in dressmaking. Patterns are hard. Love that you just wing it sometimes. That gives me the confidence to try my own way too. It doesn't need to be perfect, right?
That is absolutely correct. Is it good enough for you to put on your body? Then that's good enough. If someone's close enough to start navigating and telling you where your seams are, you can tell them to back the entire way up, because they are too close.
Definitely. I'm a big fan of the 3 feet rule. If you hold your things up to the mirror from 3 feet away, if you can't see the error, then you're like, well,
absolutely.
If anyone's standing less than 3 feet, like from me, then either that person's really close to me and they should be nice to me, or I don't want them in my zone. So
yeah, feel like there's a bubble. You're in the bubble. Please back up.
Catherine says, I've sewn a sleeve to a neck hole twice. I'm betting I'm the only one that did that.
No.
I'm sure they mean never. I'm not the only one that did that.
Yeah. I was like, no. I'm actually pretty positive. Except mine was the opposite. I sewed a collar to the sleeve.
Oh, collar sewing as well. He was like, you put all the work in, you're like, that doesn't quite fit, but we'll make it work. We'll make it work. Oh.
Yeah, I was like, why isn't this fitting right? And like, I think I had realized it thankfully before I stitched it, but I had fully pinned it. And I went to go pick up the garment. I was like, I don't think that's supposed to go there.
Oh, yeah. So definitely you've got solidarity with your sewing mistakes, Catherine. You're not alone.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but everyone else that's watching live, feel free to pop in the chat and ask Stephanie any questions that you've got.
Yeah.
What I want to know is, are you tempted by the vintage haberdashery as well? You collecting all the buttons and...
I'm usually pretty good about not, because I still have my grandmother's stash. Yep, sure do. It's huge. So I don't really need buttons, honestly. Um, but I will say it is very tempting sometimes. Absolutely. And I do listen, buttons, original buttons on a card, on the original like 1950s card, that's hard. That's hard sometimes. I'm like, but I could use it. And then I have to remember that I also have an entire bin full of those, which I will say, when they're on the original card, for some reason, I'm more likely to use them. Because I love my grandmother. I love her so much. She was a wonderful lady. I despise digging through that jar. I hate it.
And they all just mix together.
Yes. But then also the idea of me organizing them all onto cards or threads, I'm like, wow, that's a giant waste of my time. So, they sort of sit there, as they have done for the last probably 60 or 70 years. That my daughter will occasionally do exactly what I did. She'll ask me to pull the tin down. We'll pull the tin down. She'll dump them on the floor. She'll play with them. And then we put them all back in the bin when we were done.
I feel like everyone's got this, inherited tin from their gran or an aunt or something of mixed buttons. Like, what was with this generation that they thought, I'm going to buy sets of buttons, cut them all off the cards, put them all in one tin together?
It's not that. It's when the garment ran out, you were shredding it for rags. You were taking the buttons off because the buttons were still good. So you were putting the used buttons from your garment that had like fallen apart back into circulation into your tin. The downside is their flavor of neurodivergence is different than our current flavor of neurodivergence. And now we just want to play with them. We don't want to actually use them.
Like, if I see a tin of mixed buttons, I just want to find the sets.
Right? I just want to play in there for a little bit. Not necessarily looking for anything. Just want to like noodle around, see what's there. It's a learned habit, because I did it to both of my grandmother's houses every single time I went.
Catherine says, have you ever thought about teaching online? I would love the caftan class and the upcycle class.
Oh, I have thought about that. I am still on the fence. The caftan one, I think, would be actually, they'd both be pretty easy. The only thing that I run into is that then I guess I sort of fear that if I teach it online, if I still want to teach it in person, which this is my first time teaching in person. I freaking loved it. It was so cool to feel the energy in the room. That I fear that like maybe it would dilute them. And listen, I'm one of those people that once I come up with a class, I want to teach it until the wheels fall off, and then I'll do something else. But like, I know some teachers are like, tell me what you want next year. I'll do something new. And I'm like, my poor brain can't handle that. Like, I need something to work for 2 to 3 years, and then we add things in. So I have thought about it. I'm still on the fence, and I don't know where I'm going to land yet. But it is definitely something that I have considered.
I guess there'll always be people that can't make it to an in-person class because you can't, go everywhere in the world and all that. So.
I mean, listen, I can.
You'd like to.
I mean, yeah, right? Like, let's go. Where are we going? Let's go. Will I be able to eat there? Unknown, but it's fine. I'll figure it out.
Yeah, well, that'll be interesting if you did get into that.
Mm-hmm.
Ned says, great, now I'm going to be pushing an online course.
Listen. Whatever pays the bills, right, dear? Like, literally. Them lights are expensive to keep on.
Mandy says, I also have my nan's button tin in a cookie tin. Never any cookies in those tins.
Nope. I will say, Oh, I saw the best bag. Somebody showed up with the blue cookie tin, right? As a purse that it was like a vinyl panel that somebody had printed on. The strap was a ruler. The zipper pull was tiny little scissors, like a tiny little scissor emblem. And the inside was a fabric that was just buttons and like thread. And I was like, listen, someone understood the assignment. Whoever made that kit for that bag, because then she made it. So it was a kit that she bought of the blue cookie tin that, Schrodinger's tin. Does it contain sewing supplies? Does it contain cookies? You'll never know unless you open it.
Yeah, can't even shake it because then you'll crumble all the cookies and you'll be
right?
like, oh, disappointed.
And also, like, the stuff in there might sound like cookies. I did that once at my grandma's house, and I shook the cookie tin. I was like, ooh, there's actually cookies in here today. No. She just added an extra pair of scissors in there. I was like, Grandma!
Just every day, like a different like cookie tin, and just there watching you like,
Yeah, right?
fresh disappointment.
I went to my friend's house this past Christmas. She handed me a cookie tin. On the cookie tin, it says, I swear there's cookies in here. And I told her, I was like, listen, you missed the best joke. You missed the best joke of then removing the cookies and having it be sewing supplies after we opened it, after you promised cookies. But there were actual cookies for once.
Nice. I do think the cookie tin sewing tin is actually very cunning because it means that you could have a secret stash of cookies in your sewing space, and everyone would assume that it was more sewing stuff.
That is correct. Absolutely correct. Like, oh, don't use the blue one. It's the one Grandma stores all the sewing stuff in. When in fact, sometimes Grandma had the cookies.
Natalie says, my grandma has kept me in stock of metal snaps and hooks for years now. Much better than what you can buy now.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I love vintage snaps because one of my friends recently told me that they were so excited to find my vintage snaps that I was selling because they still had the center hole in them. And I said, excuse me, what? They took away the hole to help you line up the stuff? They were like, yeah, one of the sets I bought recently, it was completely closed in. I was like, no, nope. I will buy vintage forever. I will die on that hill. Like, that hole helps you put the pin through to not only hold it in place, but also to mark the other side so you know you have it at the same place. Like, what? Why would you get rid of that? Doesn't make any sense.
When you sort of first got into like selling vintage, were you sort of surprised by how much is out there?
Yes and no, because a lot of the stuff that's out there, even when I got started, so that first batch was very exciting because I'd never seen any before. And then after that, I started to notice, oh, this one pattern or these two patterns are literally everywhere. Oh, here's one that looks exactly like it and is also everywhere. So it's really interesting to see the ones that people clearly didn't use as much because that's how they've made it this far. And also it's clear to see that like there are some that are super rare and hard to find. And so that to me is kind of the balance. Like, yes, there is a lot out there, but there's also still like tiny little gems out there for you. So it's been super interesting to see that dichotomy. It was kind of terrifying when I bought the estate sale, though. That was when I was like, this lady had. So
was that like a huge volume of stuff that you bought, like in one go?
So 3 years ago now, my friend contacted me, who actually is who I'm going to go see next, and said, hey, I heard about an estate sale in South Carolina of a closed down dressmaker shop. Do you want to go? I said, and they sent me some pictures. I was like, oh, yeah, I'd love to go there. So I went in my brave little toaster, loaded up as much as could fit in that little car, including an entire 1950s McCall pattern cabinet that was full of dead stock 1976 through 1979 McCall's patterns because she was also a shop. And so I loaded the whole car up, drove it on down. Flash forward 2 years later, when I was like, wow, I wonder how they're doing. And then I get an email from them that says, hey, we want to sell you the rest of this. And I go, okay. Because even back then, they still had a ton of stuff because they hadn't finished going through all the main warehouse floor. And I was like, oh. And so we went back and forth a little bit of waiting, a little bit of, hemming and hawing, only to land on a price and a time. And I was like, okay, great. Now I'm thinking they've been selling through this like wildfire for 2 years. So why is there? So I'm like, okay, there won't be much left. I'm going to need to get a truck that's big enough to roll the pattern cabinets up. Because I did show me that there were still 3 pattern cabinets left. I was like, oh, so I definitely need the 15-foot because it's got the ramp. All the other smaller ones aren't going to fit it because there's no, I'm not going to haul a full thing of pattern cabinets and I'm not going to unload it. Absolutely not interested in that option. So I rented the 15-foot U-Haul with the ramp. That was a mistake. I get there, and it's like it was 2 years ago, almost. Because they had gone through, they had not only emptied the entirety of the shop, they had also then gone back into the overflowing office and emptied all of that too. And I was like, good, wow, okay, sure. So, I mean, we got most of it. A 20-footer would have probably gotten all of it. So it wasn't that bad, but I definitely left some stuff behind. But they donated it and it was fine. But yes, so I bought out she locked her doors in 1981 and walked away, baby. That was it. And so then I got it, 24 years later. And that's what I've been selling through for the last year to really to grow my business and to grow my website. And that's also some of what I hauled here. So this is some of her trim. I'm going to show you not in the light so you can see it. But this is some of her trim, sort of there. And it's this huge, thick cotton. This is one of her crazier fabrics.
Oh, that would probably really on trend right now.
It is. But what's funny is that this is an acetate. So this is a very thick acetate lining fabric. And actually someone at Expo came and bought most of my yardage. So I think there's a yard or two there. Because their intention is to make the best lined coat on the planet. I said 10 out of 10, no notes. That's spectacular. Please show me when you're done.
Amazing.
But yeah. So I hauled, that was, most of the patterns were from her estate still because the patterns are the one thing that is slowest to check through because, listen, she wasn't the best about putting things away or storing them appropriately or not throwing out the waistband pieces. So it's her patterns. I kind of have a moment, I have to be in the right mood to start opening up some of her patterns because I'm these are going to be incomplete and potentially trash. So I just have to be prepared for that option that this pattern that I'm going to take time on is actually not worth anything. And it just needs to I have a friend who, they want to start a museum in Texas. And so I will still send them boxes of my very incomplete patterns because they will slowly put them back together again on their own time. They have a real job, but this is their fun side thing. So it's a lovely, lovely option for me because then I don't have to have gobs of very incomplete patterns laying around. And I know that the person I'm sending them to is trying their best to make a complete pattern again before finding it a new home. And I'm we love to see the circle of completedness come back around.
Yeah, this links in well with Una's comment that everything comes around in reference to the leopard print fabric.
Yeah,
I think Una's handle is so vintage glam, so she's a big fan of vintage sewing styles as well.
Yep, absolutely. Hi, Una. She's in my lives a lot too. Hello. Any other questions in the
Do you,
chat?
I don't think we've got anything new in the chat right now. So
Mm.
yeah, get in the chat because we've only got 15 minutes left. So if you've got any burning questions for Stephanie, make sure you've already asked them in the chat. Do you want to show us your favorite vintage dress that you've made?
Yes. So there was one dress that I finally made with some of my very good fabric. And I will say, very good in knowing that it was also still damaged, so I didn't 100% feel bad cutting it. But I don't care about the minor flaws. But this dress, I'm going to back up a little so you can see it. And this is also on my channel, Stephanie Canada. You can look up frock tails is what I did. Oh, it's backwards, so I have to go this way, maybe? Yes. So this is my wonderful 1950s fabric with a 1956 pattern. No, the keyhole's not supposed to be there, but you know what? That's why I say you make the mistake. What are you going to do to finish the dress? So this is my very pretty dress that I love very much.
Oh, there we go. Oh no, I've just put it on me. Ah, there we go. No one wants to see me squinting at it. There we go. Gorgeous.
And you can see here like the gorgeous fabric that's attached to it too. So that is by far my favorite thing I've ever made. And I wear it all the time. All the time. Wearing it all the time.
That's so good that you have like a favorite thing but you get to wear it all the time and not just save it for special occasions.
Yeah. Because I am of the mindset that if I make it, that's the special occasion. And so I'm going to wear it. Now, it also depends on fiber. I got lucky. That's like really nice cotton, so I can wear it all the time without sweating every inch of it off.
Yeah. Are the vintage cottons like more difficult to find than synthetics?
No. But it's more that you just need to know that with the vintage cottons, not only do you need to check for dry rot, but you also need to check for like natural holes from moths and things like that. But you need to understand that because they've already lived a fair amount of their lives, unfortunately not in a finished product, that doesn't mean that your finished product is going to last as long as they have so far. And that's something I'm having to come to terms with. I have one piece that I made, I think in 2022. I love this dress fabric so much. It's this beautiful light gray background with black paisley all over it. So it sort of just looks like this mottled black and gray. It's the favorite fabric I've ever found. It was not dry rotted when I made it together. But I think we hit the point already because I just fixed it recently in one of my videos. And then I went to go wash it, which I do. Like I wash my clothes. That's what I do. We're not hand washing here. I ain't got time for that. But I put it on the standard like lighter cycle and it came out and the pocket now has a 3-inch rip. And I'm like, that's probably dry rotted now. Crap. Because I think I wore it a ton over these last 3 years. So it served its purpose. It finally got to live out its life as a dress, but I'm like, oh, this might now just be, we fix this one more time and then we set it in the closet and we wear it on occasion gently until it literally will, I'll wear it till it shreds off my body. Let's be real. It's my favorite dress that I've ever made. It's so good. And it had so many buttonholes, so I better be wearing it. It had like 15 buttonholes. I was like, good Lord, why?
Does that give you like motivation though to make sure that you do sew up fabrics that are like more precious?
Yes, actually it does. It literally happened right before I came here. I was like, oh, crap, I guess I should make some with my other vintage cotton so that I can enjoy them before they join the sad pile.
Okay, we've got a couple of questions in the chat. Ned says, what one pattern do you wish you could reproduce with your name on it?
There is this glorious early 1950s, late 40s Mary and Martin pattern that I still cannot find to this day. It must have been a very well-loved pattern. It's an adjustable top So it actually like wraps in 3 different ways over the bust. All of them look great. It's a fitted waist, and then like the bust section is what's the wrap, and it has a super full skirt with a hip yoke detail. And I'm like, listen, if I could find that, maybe that would be the one that I would actually try to reproduce. But again, that is a whole other world. I do not actually know how to reproduce patterns. The reason that I was able to do that 1950s dress because someone got a cease and desist letter from Simplicity about using their branded name. I was like, yeah. For we can still say it was the walkaway dress, but yeah, so I got a little CC and desisty. It's fine because technically in America you can copyright the instruction covers, you can copyright the instructions, you cannot copyright the pattern. It's literally like I forget the title of what it's called, but it's like right to use or something like that. Because if you make a pattern that is designed for people to use it, you cannot get mad at them. And actually, the law says that they will not go after if you have just reproduced the pattern, because you already made the pattern for people to use. And yes, that does hurt some of the smaller indie brands, but also you need to understand that when you're going into pattern design, that you cannot copyright your pattern. You can copyright the instructions, you can copyright the envelope in the US. The pattern is absolutely not copyrightable because it's designed to be used. So now, do I think Shein doing it or Temu doing it is no, absolutely not. I think that is hot trash because those are giant corporations. But yeah, so I will say, wow, how did we even get here? Oh, the pattern I want.
Your pattern reproductions.
Yes, that's how we got there. Because I went and I crowdsourced that original challenge because I don't know how to do patterns. So I hand traced it, scanned it in, and let people go. And I gave people clear instructions of how to do it. And then someone approached me and was like, hey, I'm actually a pattern designer. Would you like me to do the tiling, the cleaning? I said, listen, I can't pay you because I'm not charging people for this pattern. But if you want to donate that to the challenge and let other people do it, then that's fine. I'll make it available. And so they did. And so that pattern, like, I still, like, to this, I'm like, listen, if you want a tip, that's fine. But like, it's literally free because we crowdsourced it as a collective sewing team in 2022 or 3, whatever year that was. So that's why I was like, I'm not a pattern designer. I would love to learn, but I also know that unfortunately the headspace that I have and the availability that I have right now is not conducive to me learning a complete new task.
Acorn Daisy So says, are you planning to do any challenges this year?
Oh, any sewing challenges this year? Maybe. I have a couple. Listen, all of the challenges that I do are funny marketing gimmicks. I love me a vintage marketing gimmick. Because if you're going to tell me that you can make the dress at breakfast and walk away in for lunch, that's a bold statement there, Cotton. Really? And then we're going to play that game. So if I think I have 2 that are, I don't know where one of them is, unfortunately. It said it was a 15-minute blouse. And I'm like, that's a bold claim there, kids. So I think I might do something like that. Like, I'm not going to do the 1-hour dress. To me, that's been done. And I'm also not interested in wearing that as a person. So it's something that, like, if I'm going to do another challenge, I want it to be something I want to wear this time. I mean, listen, I wanted to wear the walkaway dress. I thought it looked cute. And then reality hit and I was like, this pattern's garbage. Even like the old one isn't as bad, but it's still not great. There's still too many, like, because of the way they did the darts, there's still too many adjustments that you have to make it to make a fit an actual human form that isn't going to blow up at the, minor gust and show off all your underbits to everybody because there's no back skirt. Like, you have to extend to the back skirt because it doesn't cover your booty. I'm like, what? What are you doing? What are you doing?
Ned says there should be a Halloween challenge for reasons.
I mean, yes, I am. Listen, I was born the day before Halloween, so that is just literally my existence has been loving everything Halloween.
There is a Halloween challenge that runs in September called I think it's Spooky September Sew Along. They get it because I think a lot of the people that join are quilters, so they got to start their Halloween stuff really early in September.
Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Yeah. I'm about to endeavor into it.
If you're really Halloweeny, you're probably keen for that to get going already in September.
Listen, it's a good distraction right now too, but no, it's so funny because I'm actually about to start a patchwork dress, and I'm stalling because I don't want to sew all those tiny little patches together. Like, I don't want to sew all those squares together, but I know I have to.
There's do you know the Roberts Wood patterns that are like all patchwork dresses? But that they're like a sort of you know, current ones that are being released by an indie designer. But there was they're really patchworky, and that somebody made one for one of these like sewing events that I went to, and she was like, oh yeah, I was, you know, removing like, you know, 1/4 and 1/8 inches off all these little patches, and I was like, but there's like 200 on the dress. She was like, yeah, it was a lot of work. I was like, oh my goodness, how did you do it?
Oh my God. Yeah, no, I'm trying to think, like, even my dress, I'm trying to think of like how I'm going to finish those edges, because there's going to be 7,000 of them. And I'm like, wow. How are you going to do this, Canada? This skirt's going to be gigantic, because listen, between you, me, and the wall, and the people watching this video, I decided in my infinite wisdom to take one of each of the estate sale fabrics, cut off a little hunk of it, and that's what I'm patchworking together in an estate sale dress, so that one of every single one of the fabrics that wasn't dry rotted is in this dress. I'm going to regret this choice. I know this right now, because there are so many fabrics, because every time we've gone through, when we've gotten rid of a bolt, we've saved a little portion of that fabric. So I have, if it was not dry rotted, I have one of every single piece in some size, shape, flavor, style. Yeah, it's going to be a lot.
Well, it's going to be a great like sales exercise then, because you can showcase every single fabric. You'll be like, oh, look, I just cut a square of this fabric.
Yeah.
Get it now on backroomfinds.com.
Right. The downside is that most of them have already sold. So like when I'm doing that, it's usually like the last yard that's on the bolt is usually like the one I don't sell, because that's the one where the acid from the paper discolored the end, that last wrap, because it was sitting on there for 40 some odd years, sometimes 60. And it just time got to it. And so what I do is I usually, the one that touched the bolt usually is trash. But then that outer one, the outer half, like that 22 inches, usually that's fine, usually. And so we'll cut out of there for my pieces. So most of these fabrics, it's going to be more like walking down memory lane of like, oh, do you remember this fabric? Do you remember this fabric? How about this one? How about the one on my shoulder? Like, because people will have bought them already. And well, I actually had a person show up to my booth in a dress that they made from all my vintage fabric. Like it was this glorious purple double knit. I was like, that looks spectacular. I love that you use this, and thank you for showing it to me, because it makes me inordinately happy to see things like that.
Well, you can actually see that it's gone to a good home as well.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Well, that's been a whole hour just flown by.
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Thank you for joining.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been so much fun. I really appreciate it.
Oh, I really enjoyed it. All the links to Backroom Finds and the Stephanie Canada YouTube channel and you on Instagram are all in the description below this video. So if you need another hour of Stephanie, go and check those out now. And yeah, good luck with your last minute sewing this afternoon.
Yeah, right. Oh my goodness. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure to be on here, and I hope everyone enjoys Stash Hub. And yeah, come on over and check out my all my videos. I actually did one showing you how I got to all the Sew Expo goodness, because part 2 will be coming shortly. I don't know when shortly is because I also have a Comic Con I want to go play at first.
Yeah, you gotta have your like relaxation period before you kind of get back into the real
Absolutely.
life. Yeah,
Absolutely.
well, I'm really excited to see like how it all went at the expo, because it is big preparing for something like that. So
It
yeah, I hope
really
you had a
is.
really fab time. And yeah, looking forward to the next video.
Thank you.
Cool. And I will see you guys all next week, where I'll be talking to Rachel from the French scene. So thanks everyone for
Yay.
joining. Thanks,
Bye.
Stephanie. Bye.
Thank you.